Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Well, it's about that time once again, and if you're here with us, you are in the seats with. My name is Dave Voigt. I am your venerable host for this podcast affair, where you can find on Podomatic, you can find on Apple Podcasts, you can find on YouTube. So please don't forget to subscribe, like, and join the fun. Today we're talking to directors and writers Gabriel and Reese Eveneshen for their film For the Sake of Vicious, which just had their world premiere at the Fantasia Film Festival out of Montreal and is currently playing at the festival in Sudbury right now. And just to give you a little bit of background on the film, it's a home invasion film, but it's For the Sake of Vicious really is probably sort of an apt title because it's about a woman who gets home after a long day at work, and there's a situation in her house. There is a kidnapping. There is a violent exchange going on with a man who is looking for revenge, and then the further the night goes on, the worse things get, and the violence just keeps ramping up. It really is the kind of film that is one of those ones that you can't look away from. I know that sounds cliche, but it really manages to sort of encapsulate and sort of capture the essence of pure violence, of pure unadulterated violence without purpose, but at the same time, it has purpose. Excuse me, sorry, my voice cracked a little bit there, but you'll listen to our interview with the two guys, and just a heads up, they're both personal friends of mine, so we may be going a little more off the cuff than usual, but I hope you enjoy, and I absolutely recommend that you check out the movie. All right, and like I said, don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at In the Seats, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to us on YouTube as well. But that's it for me, and we will see you next time. You boys ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, obviously, congratulations on the movie. I absolutely enjoyed it. And I mean, I think the thing that really kind of stood out for me was just how the title really is so emblematic of the film, because the violence starts off with a purpose, and then it transitions into the violence not having any purpose at all. And I'm kind of curious, can you guys walk me through sort of the initial idea for the film?
Phil, do you want to start it off? Or do you want to eat and I'll tell?
No, I mean, I can start it off. I mean, there was initial idea. I mean, are we going to go with our mall food court?
Yeah, we might as well.
You do always a good job with the mall food court thing.
Okay, well, a lot of our friendship is based out of our love of malls, because we're mall rats.
Right.
Especially in small cities in Ontario, and we have a mall that we go to here, our local mall, and most of our insane meetings take place in the food court there. And, that's where we just go sit and gossip and talk about our projects. And obviously, Gabe and I have known each other for going on over 10 years now. And I remember it was, I can't remember, sometime in 2018, and he, as much as he usually does, he was pitching all these movie ideas. And he had this one specific idea he pitched that's very different than the movie we made. But there was a nugget of something in it that I heard him say it, and I went, oh, that's interesting. Can I take a crack at writing that? And he sent me this kind of little breakdown for it. I turned it into a longer outline, and then eventually it became For the Sake of Vicious. But in terms of the actual sort of nugget of everything, I think it was coming from a place of personal anger between the two of us, in the sense that I know for me, I was coming off of a movie that didn't particularly do very well and wasn't exactly well received. And, you're an artist and you get grumpy about it. And, we have our own shit. And I know Phil was coming off of a few of those too. And I think it sort of came from this fuck it mentality of, we just want to do something that's, that's just dark and gritty and gross, and we don't really have to answer to anybody, and we'll just go make it and have fun with it. So that's sort of the genesis of the idea.
Well, That's so cool, because it is such a DIY project. And I mean, especially when you look at the end credits, the both of you, your names are literally everywhere. And I mean, I love, I guess the right word is, because we tend to forget sort of the spirit of sort of the independent filmmaking when, you know, in reality, you guys aren't just the writers or the directors or the editors. You're literally carrying bathtubs upstairs and getting sandwiches for the rest of the cast. This is what independent filmmaking is kind of all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it turned into. And I mean, Reese and I, we come from that school of filmmaking. Like, you know, we come from a small town, and, you know, there's other filmmakers that we literally came from that. We never went to film school. You know, we just made movies. And I guess, you know, all the other million filmmakers out there who never went to film school can kind of relate to that, you know, you kind of have to do everything yourself. And this was the first time, you know, him and I were, you know, coming together to make a movie when we've been a part of each other's projects in some way. So we kind of knew ahead of time that we both had this, like, do it or die, you know, like, you know, wouldn't say nothing was impossible. We'd see things and go, well, we can figure that out. We can make that work. You know, even, you know, bringing up a cast iron, whatever, bathtub up a narrow stairwell. Yeah, we can do that. Why couldn't we? It'll take us 10 hours, but we'll still do it.
Yeah, because it's, you know, you get stuck in this, you know, in the movie making system, they have their ways of doing things. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but we're very of the class of, like, oh, well, if nobody's doing it, then we'll just do it. Like, and there were countless times on this production where we would literally, in some cases, just take the camera and just start shooting stuff. Like, it's like, well, we have to get this done. Or, you know, Phil's doing craft in the morning, or I'm doing special makeup effects. Like, and we don't think of it that way. It's not like a pride or ego thing. It's just, well, this is what you have to do to get it done.
How you make movies.
How you make movies.
It's gotta get done, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know how you do it. And that's not to say, I mean, I'm sure we'd love to both work on a production where everybody's doing that for us, but it's kind of fun too, you know? So
well,
maybe
that's
not bringing the tub up the stairs. So
you don't see, you can't, this is the thing that kills me. You can't see a set like we had. And you do sometimes see it where, you know, the filmmakers and the certain crew and stuff, people have these egos and they're not, like, you can't have a set like that on independent cinema. You know, it's that's the thing with independent cinema, is that it's independent. It's in an independent source. It's independent funding, right? Like, you kind of have to do everything yourself independently. And that's just, you know, even though, you know, we had some fantastic producers on board, like Abby Fettergreen and Raven Banner, you know, we still had to do a lot of stuff ourselves. And I'm not, you know, they trusted us, thank God, but I don't even know why they trusted us, to be honest. I mean, it's like, I mean, they saw we could make movies, I guess, but that's kind of all they had going, right? Like,
I think there's definitely this sort of, like, you know, okay, good luck, guys, and they're secretly going, oh my God, what the fuck did we just do? Like, what did we give these guys? And thank God they're pretty happy with the movie. So,
and I mean, the film really does try to break a lot of conventions, and I mean, especially in a lot of the action sequences, because I mean, my initial reaction in seeing, like, some of the stuff in the kitchen and the bathroom, it's almost to try to go wide so you can try to see more of it. But in reality, this film actually goes closer. And I mean, I think the thing that really struck me at the end was that, as violent as it actually is, there isn't that much that we actually see. It's always the ADR. It's stuff it's sound effects that are maybe off camera. How big of a factor was that for you guys? Because obviously, when you're working on a budget, you can't always do the effects, but you have to create the illusion of effects.
Right. Well, I mean, I know we originally set out to want to show a lot of stuff, and I think the reality of what you're seeing in the final cut is that sometimes stuff just doesn't work. And, you know, from years of experience, well, if I edit it this way, it'll make it work, you know? And I think that's why, because I know we wanted to show a lot more than that's actually on screen. And I think a lot of what you do see, or the limits of what you do see, is just from our own limitations, as from what our budget or something that didn't show up on the day, which happened a lot, and stuff like that. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it really did kind of also turn out at the same time to be exactly what we were going for, which is we wanted these fights to feel real. We wanted to give it this sort of quality of that you're in the fight, you know, like you're with these guys, and fights aren't clean. They're messy and they're sweaty and they're loud and they're dirty. And it's just like bodies are flying this way and that way. And sometimes you're not catching what's happening on this side and this is going on. So, I mean, we really wanted to tap into that, which is a certain fights that you don't really see a whole lot of. So, and specifically at the indie level, I mean, fights in indie movies, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So,
Yeah. And I mean, the last 30, 40 minutes of the film is all fighting. So we had to make sure, we had to pick our battles with that to make sure we could pull some things off without making it seem, you know, you have to pick and battle you have to pick your battles with the fight stuff. And again, like what Reese was saying, like some of the stuff we had in the script before, it didn't come out on screen, but you kind of got like the Cole's notes versions of some of the scenes in the final product of the film. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But you know, a lot of that really works in your favor because it allows the audience member to sort of have that stuff happening in their imagination, which many times can be a lot more gruesome and a lot more sort of vivid than something you might be able to put on screen.
exactly. Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, and that's often the best trick of filmmaking is what you don't see is far more visceral and horrifying. You know, as much as we like to see all these horrible things happen to people, picturing it sometimes is where I think there was even a movie that played at Fantasia the other day that I won't say the name of, but had it not shown the effect, it was far more effective when you just heard it going on.
Right.
So.
You know, I love how Reese is engaged with Gabriel's kind of rolling his eyes at me right now, but that's another story for another day.
Well, I kind of wanted to go back. Sorry, I was just trying to think. You had asked about, were you asking about what drew us to the story or what about the story was interesting? Yeah, so I had to think about it. Sorry, I'll go back to it and you can kind of piece it in.
Why don't you tell them the original concept first, how it was supposed to take place in the summer during a blackout in the home. And instead of gangs showing up with these masks, it was a SWAT team.
Yeah.
So it was a very completely different film.
It was, and it took place over a few days. And I think the thing I really liked about it in the first version is I liked the idea of 3 different viewpoints and none of them agreed with each other.
Right.
Because, I mean, the basis of great drama, anybody will tell you, is when you have 2 people that don't agree with each other. But I'm like, here you had 3, and you had a whole opportunity for the first half of the movie was for them to try and dissect each other and get to the bottom of a scenario that none of them actually knows what happened. And to me, and this is going to sound more political than I mean, I'm like, that was a perfect representation for everything that's going on in our lives, you know, like, especially at that moment. It's like, here's a scenario that happened. Here's a person that we think did it, but we don't know that did it. Here's a person that's insisting that they did it. And then you've got the outside party going, I have no idea what any of this means. I'm going to try and figure it out myself. That was really attractive to me. So I really liked that aspect of it.
Now, because like you say, this is indie filmmaking, you've got to be able to adapt on the fly. And I mean, I'm certain there were days where it was like, oh shit, so-and-so didn't show up, or this piece of equipment didn't show up, or that didn't show up. What do we do now? We got to rewrite it. We got to figure it out. How does that sort of fuel you guys creatively?
You can try taking that one.
I mean, we were actually lucky for this set. You know, people were paid and everyone showed up, so we didn't have anyone leave, or we didn't have we didn't have anything bad happen. It was more of because it was a like we originally intended this place to be a studio. We were actually going to build the house in a studio environment, a warehouse or whatever. So, you know, you could remove the ceilings. It was all going to be kind of one floor, like a bungalow. But then that kind of like didn't happen. Like it was like a month and a half or 2 months before we started shooting. So then we had to really adapt the physical location to what we could just find, which was this house that was going to be demoed. And I think that was the challenging part, was like kind of going in there last minute going, everything that we had in our heads with the script, visualizing everything had to be changed for this house that we just found that we're, I don't know what, Reese, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks away from shooting.
Yeah.
for me personally, that was challenging because I'm a very visual person, and suddenly you're throwing out, 10 months of visual buildup in your head. Even storyboard shots. Like we storyboarded more than half the film. So that was a huge thing. But then you also look at the opportunities, like, oh, it's great and demoed. Cool, we can drill, the crew can drill holes in the floor to run extension cords upstairs for power outlets, so we can have more clearance with our camera movement on the ground level. Be able to do 360-degree shots and stuff like that. But the biggest thing for me personally was the challenge of adapting the physical house, because it's such a major key player in this film with these three actors encasing them. And also, there's a lot of combat that's happening.
Yeah.
And how is that going to unfold in this house that, we kind of got a month away? So there was all these little things that you kind of just had to roll with and trust other departments, like the stunt coordinators, the fight guys, because of the way they are. And so, seasoned, and they know exactly what they were doing, and also easygoing, they were able to jump in and go, cool, yeah, we can make this work. They just projected so much confidence. But yeah, definitely the physical, the location of the house, like that massive change up and kind of erasing what you had in your head visually and going, shit, okay, well, this is the way it's going to be. And that was a good first icebreaker for, I'm sure there was stuff on set and stuff that happened, but that was like the big one.
Okay.
I found that I think that sort of DIY spirit is that you just get used to the idea that nothing's necessarily going to go the way you want to, and you can't be precious about it, because time was consistently our enemy on set.
Yeah.
There just never seemed to be enough time. So even in scenes, like, you look at it, you look at the time of day, you look at the time of day that you wanted ended, and you'd go, okay, I've got to go into this script and we've got to cut a page now. And you can't be precious about it. You just have to get down to the bare bones of, like, wait, this has got to go, this has got to go, this has got to go. What's the key points of this scene? And even, like, we had, like Gabe said, like, we had versions of scenes that were supposed to play out with people getting up and moving and doing more. And you go, yeah, but if we do that, it's another setup and we have to do this, so we can't do that. So we got to cut it out. I found some of the more painful things just for me was that I won't go into specifics, but there were certain special effects that were planned that were not executed or delivered on set on the days, that were really big set pieces. And that was a bit of a tough pill to swallow, because the reality with a movie like this is that that's your selling point. I mean, and if they're not there, and, you're kind of sitting there going, well, fuck, okay, that was supposed to be our big thing. Like, that was a big moment. Now we've got to completely rethink what happens to this. And again, you kind of go into that mode of, like, well, what would I do? What do you do? Like, we just go ahead and we figure it out. So
Sure. Now, I mean, does casting really come down to being able to, for you guys to be able to sort of maintain the key core of a story? Because, I mean, Laura's performance in this really is such a linchpin to the entire movie that without her, it could have very easily fallen apart.
yeah, well, I mean, casting was obviously incredibly important, because you've got a movie where the first half relies solely on watching these three talk to each other and have verbal arguments. And it was very difficult to cast for it, because at first we were focused more on the physical attributes of things. Maybe I know performance was important, but we were really focused on, like, well, physically, these people have to go through a lot of shit. And then you kind of had to rethink it. And it's like, well, Laura, and, we'd seen her in Poor Agnes, we'd seen her in Life Changer. Obviously, Abby, who had worked with her plenty of times, we're like, well, she's a phenomenal actress, and she would bring a lot to it. But we had never pictured the character that way. And it wasn't until we saw her for the first time auditioning that we both looked at each other and went, yeah, well, shit, it's obvious. Like, she's really good,
That was the other thing with the cast too, right? Like, I think Reese mentioned this before, is that they all needed to look like they lived in the same world, or they acted in the same world, because there are different types of actors, and there's not one right or wrong way of acting. It's just when they all come in, you might see someone who looks perfect, he's even voice is perfect, but just the acting style is not really in the same world or the universe as the other two that they would be acting against, you know? So it was like you have all these different puzzles and you're trying to put these pieces to make them make sense with each other. And, you know, this was just the perfect combination that ended up being with what we had with Nick and Cullen and Laura.
For sure.
And it was tricky too, because if one of them didn't work, then it would collapse the other two. You know? Like that was probably the scariest part of it. And we didn't really know how it was going to work. Like Laura, we were like, cool. Colin I had worked with, so I knew what we could go with there. Nick we hadn't worked with, and we were going off of auditions. And again, low budget movie. We only had one table read where it was just Gabe, the 3 actors, and myself. And after that, we were like, okay, I think we can make this work. So,
is one of the big cruxes of indie filmmaking just faith and kind of going on your gut?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody who tells you any different is lying. So,
because I mean that kind of dovetails into something else I wanted to ask, because we're all in the entertainment industry in various shapes and forms, but at the same time, we're all people with day jobs.
yes.
And I'm kind of curious, how do you guys sort of balance the need of, this is the kind of film I want to tell, this is the kind of story I want to tell, this is the kind of filmmaker I want to be, versus but if I tweak this, maybe I've got a better chance of selling it and maybe getting picked up and doing that and yada, 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 and all those sort of, the old commerce versus finance, the creative versus commerce debate that, everyone sort of struggles with.
Yeah. Gabe, you always have a lot to say on this subject. Take it away.
Trying to interpret the question in a way. So basically, what's drawing us to this kind of film versus
why are you indie filmmakers as opposed to sort of directors for hire or people who work in a larger system, that kind of thing?
Because it's so dense out there now. There's so many filmmakers, and it's so hard to get your voice heard as a filmmaker, and part of the time you just want to make movies that you want to make, but that's going to come at a sacrifice. There's a lot of waiting and a lot of trying to find the money and trying to find the right project to do. I mean, Reese and I talked, we would love to be directors for hire. Heck, direct commercials and stuff, because it's a great paycheck. But let's face it, no one's sending us any emails for that. It's a different ballgame. Like, it's just, I honestly think it's just because the industry's so saturated. And then sometimes I wonder if people even think that, like, maybe they think you're not into that, or something as well, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's hard because it's like part of you just wants to make the movies you want to make, and that's it. And you have your job or whatever job, your other source of income, and you don't make movies to make money. And that's another thing, right? Like, why do we do this? Why are we why are we taking massive pay cuts or not doing anything when everyone else on the film set got paid, but the directors didn't, like in some situations. So why are we doing this? It's just the creative process. Just the act of doing it, and, doing it with Reese on this one, knowing him for just over 10 years and coming together, was like, why wouldn't we want to go make a movie like this together? This is the type of movie we would want to see, and that's kind of the films we want to make. Whether they come out good, that's another story. Whether they come out bad, that's another story, right? But it's the attempt of making something, and the process, right? Like, you learn a lot about yourself and what you like and whatnot.
Well, and now here's the follow-up to that, because for both of you on previous efforts, you've been able to have the payoff of an audience, or have the payoff to be able to sort of experience it with a festival crowd, and to sort of being able to take that reward in that way. But I mean, for you guys, from basically half of the post-process on, you've been in your living room like the rest of us. How has that kind of changed your perspective, not just on this film, but maybe even going forward?
It's shitty. You want an audience, you know. And I know when COVID hit and we were starting posting this, Reese and I were bummed.
Yeah.
We had grand illusions of, going to driving to festivals and going to Germany and Spain or whatever, and sitting and just meeting people and talking about your movie and other movies and stuff, and that's not happening. And I mean, it's like theater, right? It's like, well, let's put on a theater, like it's like a theater show, a bunch of actors in a theater playing to nobody for a week straight every night. It sucks. You make movies for people, you make movies for audiences. So it definitely was, it's a bummer that we didn't, that we're not able to sit in a theater with an audience. Because I know that during the film, Reese and I were talking about that. We were talking about if this movie got into Fantasia, how exciting is that going to be with the Fantasia audience? Because we're a Fantasia audience too.
Of course, yeah.
Like for, even when we don't have a movie playing there, we're there watching movies.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, the buildup, I'm trying to think of a parallel, it just sucks. And we're still dealing with that now,
It's been a tough pill to swallow, that's for sure. Because at first, when it was first announced, COVID, there was that glimmer of hope that, well, maybe come the summer we'll be out of this, and then at a certain point you very quickly realize that you weren't. And we, as Gabe just pointed out, we do just tend to naturally gravitate towards movies that we think in our own minds will play well to an audience.
Right.
I don't think there's filmmakers out there who got into it to be like, I want to make movies for VOD, like we became filmmakers because we watched movies on the big screen, and that's what we want to do. And when you make a movie like Vicious, that's built the way it is and structured the way it is and ends with like a 35-minute action scene, you go, well, this is for an audience.
I don't want people watching this on their iPhone.
No, it's like we want to play an audience. And it sucks because, the premiere on Wednesday night, we have no fucking clue how people are going to react to it. We can't see anybody reacting to it. We can't see the audience afterwards for the Q&A. It's just... it is a very tough pill to swallow, but I mean, it is what it is. That's the situation we're in. So you just, much like we did on set when shit didn't work, you suck it up and you go, well, we got to move on and just do our thing. So
figure it out. Yeah, just move on.
It's tough because you're thinking in your head during the world premiere on Wednesday night, thinking there's going to be some dude out there or some girl out there who's watching this movie on their little iPhone on their couch.
Yeah.
With their headphones, with their earbuds in. Like this,
Yeah.
Like, man. Like, is that really the future? Is that where this is going now? Like,
then going forward, what do you think the payoff is for the both of you?
I think it was the experience of working together and just with our friendship and knowing that our friendship survived, which is good. And knowing that we came out of this with a movie that we actually think turned out pretty good. And I think some of the more fun aspects of it actually were just the experiences of us in post with me editing and Gabe doing the score and the collaboration of making those two worlds merge and how we could kind of pull that off. And I look at that now and I'm like, that's probably the stuff I'm most proud of.
That was the most surprising. I knew Reese was a really good editor, but seeing him, like, there was a lot of trust on set with him as a co-director, seeing him direct scenes. And, I knew he was editing it. So it was amazing to see, like, think back and look at everything and then see the edit. And, some stuff in my head, I'm like, yeah, I knew on set how he was going to cut that. But then there were some scenes I was like, holy crap, man. Like, I did not see that coming. That's so well done. Like, there was some really cool stuff when they started coming in with Laura. Just the style and stuff. Thoroughly blown away by his edit on it. I learned a lot, and his turnaround was ridiculous. Sometimes I wondered if he was cheating and was like editing while we were shooting the movie, but I knew that wasn't happening because I saw him pretty much 24 hours a day.
I can neither confirm nor deny. Yeah, and I mean, same goes back to Gabe. I mean, there's stuff that he was doing on set visually that I couldn't wrap my head around on the day. Like, I just couldn't see it until I was in the edit. And I was like, holy fuck, that was a great idea. Like I
But
would
there's also stuff that you were like, that's a horrible idea.
Well, yeah, but that's the trade-off of filmmaking, and whether it was just me doing it myself or him. I said this best the other night. This movie doesn't exist without Phil and I co-directing it. Like if one of us did it separately, it wouldn't have turned out half as good as it did. The only reason it works is because our minds came together and we made this thing, and I don't know how we did it, but it's just that when I watched, I'm like, it is a perfect combination of the things we both like and dislike, and through all the arguments and pain and love and hugs, and like we got a pretty cool movie out of it. And that's the thing I take away from it. That's like the gratifying thing. So
I think it's a good example of two filmmakers coming together exactly and just making a movie together and dropping, because filmmaking carries a lot of ego, and Reese and I couldn't have any egos with each other.
We had to completely throw our ego.
This was like, if anyone thought we were egotistical, maybe they still do, but at the same time, we don't think we're like, we had like, dude, like I was going to Walmart in the morning at like 6 a.m. to get catering. Reese was picking up, God, dude, like, like and it really showed us to like, it wasn't like, as a director, sometimes you have that thing, it's my movie, it's my vision and whatnot.
Right.
And this, it was, you're sharing, and you're not even sharing it. It's ours.
Yeah.
It's yours together. And that was just interesting from my perspective, where I'm like, we had to be in the same mind. Like it was just, it's weird to look back on and see that we did it and successfully, at least in our eyes, pulled it off.
I also take the fun memories away too of like Phil gave in the middle of things like building a fence outside for a big scene, or me because our toilet flooded upstairs. The one toilet we had, it flooded down into the kitchen, and I used to do plumbing, so I was trying to fix it. And like I was taping this barrier on the ceiling, and all the actors and cast and crew are watching us going, who the fuck are these guys? Like when are we gonna make this movie? And we're both like, just one sec. Phil's building a fence. I'm like taping piss and shit water to the ceiling so it doesn't leak down onto the set. And I'm like, you really can't have an ego during that, because anybody other set, they'd be like, somebody else will do this. It's like, no, we have to do it ourselves. So.
Well, building a fence and taping piss and shit water really feels like two things that sort of encapsulate sort of the indie filmmaking experience.
Exactly.
It really does. And I mean, I'm glad you guys are going to get to share this with audiences soon. And I think people are really going to dig it, because it really does create this sort of intense moment that kind of keeps you on edge. It kind of keeps you guessing as it veers into something a lot more chaotic, to be quite frank. And it's amazing to watch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll end it on that.